When you picture the Queen Mother, what immediately comes to mind? For so many of us, it's that image of grandeur, isn't it?
Absolutely. You think of dazzling diamonds, ropes of pearls, those historic tiaras, just pure royal splendor.
Exactly. Yeah. Magnificent, almost overwhelming jewels. But okay, just hold that image for a second, because today we're actually zooming in on something, well, much smaller.
Almost intimate by comparison.
Yes, a tiny bee brooch. Not one of those huge statement pieces, but something delicate, something that, well, it buzzes with this incredible sentimental value. It's a different kind of story.
And it really makes you think, doesn't it? How often the things we treasure most aren't the flashiest or the most expensive.
Completely. It's those unassuming little objects that somehow soak up all the meaning, all the memories. They become these touchstones, you know?
Like little anchors to our past or to people we've loved.
Exactly. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had something like that? A small thing, maybe a little trinket from childhood, or just a simple photo that holds, I don't know, just so much more emotional weight than its actual size or monetary value.
Oh, I think everyone has something like that. A button, a worn out book.
Right. And that universal feeling, that connection to small, meaningful things is exactly what we're tapping into today with this bee brooch. It belonged to the Queen Mother, and its story is just woven with family, with affection, and a kind of gentle legacy in royal history.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is how this one tiny brooch gives us this window into the more personal side of the royal family.
Yeah, behind the public facade.
Exactly. It shows those intimate connections, the value they placed on things beyond just, well, jewels and status. Even modest keepsakes mattered.
Totally. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into the sentimental bee brooch of the royal family.
And our mission really is to trace the journey of this little bee.
Yeah, we want to understand its history, why it held such significance, and what it tells you about family, about heritage, and, well, love within the British royal family. It's a unique glimpse, isn't it?
It really is. A glimpse into those personal threads in the whole royal tapestry.
Okay, then. Let's follow this bee. Where does its story actually begin?
All right, so we need to go back, way back to September 1900. Picture the scene, the dawn of a new century, lots of change in the air.
Okay.
And just a few weeks before that, in August, a baby girl was born, Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon.
The future Queen Mother herself. Wow, so right from the very beginning.
Right from the start. And in that September, this little bee brooch arrives. It's a gift for the infant Lady Elizabeth.
A christening gift, perhaps, or just a welcome to the world token.
The source suggests it was a gift just weeks after her birth, likely a christening or early infancy present, and it came from her godmother.
The godmother connection. And who was she?
She was a Mrs. Arthur James. Her given name was Mary Venetia Cavendish Bentinck.
Venetia James. Not a name most people would immediately recognize today, I suppose.
Probably not. But our source material points out a really key detail here, the family link. It shows just how interconnected these aristocratic families were back then.
Right. It wasn't just a random choice of godmother.
Not at all. Venetia was actually the second cousin of Lady Elizabeth's mother, Cecilia Bowes-Lyon.
Okay, so there's a direct blood relation reinforcing those family ties.
Exactly. In that world, choosing godparents often cemented those existing bonds. It kind of wove this sense of shared history and connection right into a child's life from day one.
And then there's this mention of the Marlborough house set. That sounds quite exclusive. What was that about?
Yes, that adds another layer. Venetia and her husband, Arthur James, were prominent members of this group.
Which was?
Essentially, the inner circle surrounding the then Prince and Princess of Wales, who soon became King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra. Think of them as the couple's close friends, their social set.
So being part of that set meant you were really in high society, close to the throne.
Absolutely. It highlights their social standing and their direct pipeline, if you like, to the heart of the royal family. So this gift, this little bee brooch, wasn't just a personal token from a cousin godmother.
Carried a bit more weight.
Yeah, it kind of resonated with these significant social connections coming from someone right inside that influential royal orbit.
Interesting. So from the very start, this small bee is already layered with meaning family, royalty, the social scene of the time. Okay, let's look closer at the brooch itself. It's described as small, but obviously well made. What did it actually look like?
The source gives us a lovely detailed picture. It's about 6 centimeters long, so, not huge, and clearly shaped like a bee.
Okay.
The materials are really quite special. The body, The thorax and the abdomen is set with cat's eye chrysoberyls.
Cat's eye chrysoberyls, what are they like?
They're fascinating gemstones. They have this unique optical effect called chatoyancy. It looks like a single sharp line of light moves across the surface when you turn the stone.
Oh, like a cat's eye in the dark. I can picture that sort of shimmer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A very subtle, almost silky gleam. And then for contrast, you have the eyes.
Let me guess, rubies.
You got it. Cabochon rubies. So smooth, polished domes, not faceted, giving this intense pop of deep red.
Wow, that would stand out beautifully against the chrysoberyls.
Definitely. A warm focal point. And then for the sparkle factor.
Diamonds, of course.
Naturally. Tiny, brilliant cut diamonds were used for the bee's head and its delicate wings. Just enough to catch the light and add that essential brilliance.
So you've got this mix of textures and light, the shimmer, the deep color, the sparkle, all in this tiny bee form. It sounds exquisite.
It really does. A miniature work of art. And there's one more little touch mentioned.
Oh, yes.
A single delicate pearl. It's set right at the end of the bar pin that the bee sits on.
Ah, okay. Just a soft little accent.
Exactly. It adds a touch of softness, maybe a bit of refinement, balancing the gemstones. It just reinforces that this was a thoughtfully designed, crafted piece, not just, off the shelf.
Definitely sounds like a special commission. And the bee itself, choosing a bee motif must have had some meaning too, right? Bees usually symbolize things.
Oh, absolutely. Bees are loaded with symbolism across history and cultures. Obviously, they represent industriousness, diligence, busy as a bee.
Right, hard work.
But also loyalty, community, working together for the hive, and even grace. In some traditions, bees were even linked to royalty, to order, to sweetness.
So picking a bee wasn't just random. It was probably quite deliberate, packing in all those positive ideas for the new baby.
Very likely. It subtly imbues the gift with these aspirational qualities right from the beginning, maybe even a nod towards a life of duty and service, which of course turned out to be very prescient.
Okay, so this precious little bee arrives in 1900 for the infant Lady Elizabeth. Let's jump forward now, quite a jump to 1945. What's happening with the brooch then?
This is a really pivotal moment in its journey. In 1945, the owner, now the Queen Mother, decides to pass it on.
To the next generation.
Exactly. She gives the bee brooch to her younger daughter, Princess Margaret.
So the bee takes flight again from mother to daughter. That feels significant.
It really does. It marks the brooch's transition from just a personal childhood gift to a proper family heirloom. It's a physical link carrying memories and affection down the line.
A way for the Queen Mother to share a piece of her own early history.
Precisely. And it's clear Princess Margaret really understood and valued that sentimental weight.
How do we know that? Was there, a record of it?
Yes, and it's quite touching. Our source mentions a handwritten note made by Princess Margaret herself when she received it.
Oh, brilliant. What did it say?
It said, "Almost first bit of jewelry given to Mum by Venetia James. Given to me 10th February 1945.
Almost first bit of jewelry. That phrase really jumps out, doesn't it? It shows she knew its place in her mother's life.
Absolutely. It highlights how significant this little brooch was perceived to be, right from her mother's earliest years. And the fact that Margaret documented the date and the giver the provenance shows she wasn't just receiving another pretty thing.
No, she was receiving a story, a connection.
Exactly. A direct link to her mother's childhood and to this godmother, Venetia, who was clearly important. It was personal history made tangible.
It's a lovely little insight into their relationship, isn't it? This small object carrying so much history between them. Now, interestingly, the source says we don't really have photos of Margaret actually wearing the bee brooch.
That's true. Specific photos of her wearing it seem elusive, or at least not widely published. But the source does mention a photograph of Princess Margaret from 1945.
So around the time she received it.
Yes. And it apparently captures her elegance and style during that period.
Mm-hmm.
So while we don't see the bee pinned to her lapel in that image, it helps us picture her at that moment in time.
It puts the person and the object in the same frame, historically speaking.
Exactly. It connects the recipient to the era she received this special gift. And we know it remained in her personal collection for many, many years after that.
So clearly it wasn't just put in a drawer and forgotten.
Oh no, it stayed with her. A constant, quiet symbol of that family bond, that connection to her mother, and maybe even a nod to the traditions passed down through these personal items.
Right. Okay, so it's treasured by Princess Margaret for decades. But then the story takes another turn. We jump to 2006 and there's an auction.
Yes, the auction of Princess Margaret's jewels at Christie's. This was a major event.
I can imagine. Royal jewelry coming up for sale always causes a stir, doesn't it?
Always. There's immense interest from collectors, museums, historians, just the public fascination with anything that has that royal provenance, that documented link to the family.
And Princess Margaret's collection would have been especially captivating given her profile.
Absolutely. And nestled amongst all the perhaps more obviously spectacular pieces, the tiaras, the necklaces, there are little bee brooch.
Still buzzing along.
Yeah.
And did it attract much attention at the auction?
It certainly did. Despite its size, it fetched a really quite remarkable price.
How much did it go for?
It sold for £33,600.
Wow. Okay, so maybe not millions like some crown jewels, but £33,000 for a small brooch like that.
It's a significant sum, definitely. And it really speaks volumes about that added value, doesn't it? The value that comes from its history, its story, its connection to both the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret.
It's like the sentimentality itself became part of its market value. People weren't just buying gemstones, they were buying a piece of royal history, a piece of that personal narrative.
That's exactly it. The story is inseparable from the object. So the auction in 2006, well, it marked the end of the brooch's time within that direct family line.
A new chapter begins outside the family.
Yes. But as the source suggests, it didn't really end the story. In a way, it just added another layer to its legacy. It became this piece that people know about that captures the imagination precisely because of its journey.
It solidifies its place in the narrative of royal jewelry history. Now let's circle back for a moment to the giver, Venetia James. Her act started this whole story. What else do we learn about her?
Well, the source reminds us that she passed away in 1948. And interestingly, it notes she didn't have any children of her own.
Which perhaps makes her gifts to her goddaughter, Queen Elizabeth, feel even more pointed, more meaningful maybe, like passing on affection or legacy in a different way.
That's a very possible reading, yes. A way to express that familial bond. And the bee brooch wasn't the only significant thing she left to her goddaughter.
Oh, there were other pieces mentioned.
Yes, our research highlights two other notable bequests from Venetia to the Queen Mother in her will.
Okay, what were they?
One was described as a gold chain with diamond drops and rubies. Sounds quite elegant, doesn't it?
Definitely sounds substantial. And the other?
The other was a large diamond brooch, but with a specific mention of a Japanese design.
Oh, interesting. A Japanese design diamond brooch. That sounds quite unique, maybe reflecting tastes or travels of the time.
It does hint at something perhaps a bit more stylistically distinct. Both pieces clearly suggest significant value, both materially and, given the relationship, sentimentally.
Right, but then comes a little twist, a bit of a mystery.
Exactly. The source material points out that unlike the bee brooch, whose history we can trace quite clearly, the current whereabouts of these other two pieces, the gold chain and the Japanese diamond brooch, are, well, unknown.
Unknown, as in not accounted for in public records of the royal collection.
Precisely. They haven't been publicly identified or cataloged as being part of the main royal collections accessible to researchers or the public eye. Which, yes, adds that little element of intrigue.
So we don't know if they're still privately held or were sold or gifted onwards, just vanished from the public record.
We just don't know. It leaves room for speculation. It's one of those little historical puzzles.
But even with that mystery surrounding the other gifts, the bee brooch stands out, doesn't it? It remains this solid, tangible link.
Absolutely. It's the one piece from that initial godmotherly gesture in 1900 that we can follow through the generations. It's the documented survivor, you could say.
A constant reminder of that bond between Venetia James and the young Elizabeth, later Queen Mother.
Exactly. It serves as this enduring, concrete symbol of that relationship and that early act of affection.
So when you stand back and look at the whole story, this little bee brooch, compared to, say, the crown jewels or massive state necklaces, it really holds its own, doesn't it, in terms of meaning?
Oh, absolutely. It's a perfect illustration that an object's true value isn't always about size or carats or monetary cost.
It's about the story it carries.
Precisely. This brooch was so much more than just decoration. It was a symbol of love between a godmother and goddaughter. It became a cherished heirloom linking mother and daughter. And now it's a piece of documented personal history within this huge public institution.
And it's that combination, I think, the understated beauty, the quality craftsmanship, but overlaid with this deep personal history that makes it so compelling.
It really pulls back the curtain a little, doesn't it?
Right.
It reminds you that amidst all the ceremony and the grandeur of royal life, there are these very human connections.
These attachments to small things that hold big emotions.
Yes. And it highlights how royal life is this complex blend. There's the history, the duty, the opulence, sure, but there are also these quiet, personal sentiments, often wrapped up in seemingly unassuming objects like this bee.
It encourages you to look a bit deeper, beyond just the surface glitter.
Definitely. To appreciate the human stories woven into the historical fabric.
So, wrapping this up, the journey of this tiny bee from that simple christening gift in 1900 to being passed down, cherished, and eventually auctioned, it just perfectly highlights how emotional significance can truly outweigh material value sometimes.
It stands for those enduring family bonds, for the way heritage is carried forward, and just the simple power of personal connections, even within the context of the royal family.
It's quite captivating, really, when you think about it. How many other small personal objects might be tucked away in royal vaults or private collections?
Exactly. Each potentially holding its own unique story, its own secrets, offering little windows into the lives and relationships of the people who own them. It makes you wonder about all those hidden histories.
It really does. Untold stories wrapped up in everyday things, even in extraordinary lives. And maybe that's a final thought for you listening today to take away from our deep dive. Think about your own life. What are the seemingly insignificant objects you hold on to? The small trinkets, maybe a faded letter, a worn out coin. What immense emotional weight do they carry for you?
That's a great point.
What stories could they tell about your history, your connections? Because perhaps, just like the Queen Mother's little bee brooch, the smallest things in our lives can hold the most profound meaning, linking us across time to the people and moments we cherish.
A beautiful thought to end on.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.